So we're doing something a little bit different this week.
A lot bit different.
A little bit. So instead of movies, we're going to tackle, I guess, concepts related to cinema.
Okay.
My original pitch was articles, but 2 videos, a podcast, and an article.
We did it.
Yeah.
It's about on par for us.
Yeah.
Shay says I get credit for his.
Okay, so that's yours then.
Yep.
Okay. So, we're going to start off with the one that I picked out because, might as well do it in the order we joined the podcast, like usual.
That makes sense.
Okay, so I went with a podcast from cracked.com.
It's just a fun sentence.
It's a bad podcast. I'm going to come right out and say it off the bat. It's
People think we're a bad podcast.
And we are. And this one also is. So this was the Cracked podcast they did for a while, which was, of course, hosted by Jack O'Brien, the, I believe, editor-in-chief of Cracked.com. Yeah, and he is joined by Jason Pargin, better known as David Wong, the, I believe, managing editor of Cracked.com, which means he basically was the guy who actually did things. Kind of the guy who created Cracked.com, which, I'm sure a lot of people, aren't too happy about that. We'll get into that more later. But yeah, everybody remembers, of course, the basic concept of this one.
Yes.
Movies have to happen a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Basically.
Otherwise, people won't read your script.
Basically, okay, here's the thing. David Wong, for a while there, was obsessed with this concept of very specifically the idea at the 60-minute mark of a movie or the 60-page mark of a script, there is an explosion.
Then you need more explosions than that, man. What the fuck?
And he by the time he got around to recording this podcast, which I think might be the only way he got this little factoid onto the site, as far as I know, because he was trying to get it into an article for a long time. But by the time he got around to here, he'd expanded it to, something big and important happens at the 60-minute mark. Somebody dies, or there's a really big emotional breakdown, something right here. So yeah, for a little while there, I was a freelance editor for Cracked.com, and so the thing with a freelance editor is you're basically a writer.
Yeah.
And the guy who gets credited as a writer is basically a researcher. And we'll come back to that later. But so while I was doing the editing, they'd say, hey, we just approved this pitch from this guy, and he turned in this article, and it's unreadable. Fix it. And so they did this with Jason Pargin, David Wong's little pet factoid that he wanted on the site. For one thing, the entire article was worthless. I couldn't salvage anything from it, but I tried my damnedest to prove the 60-minute thing. I accidentally disproved it.
Oops.
I went through, I think, 25 movies, something like that. Like mainstream action movies. I had access to a lot because I'm me. I made sure to do only mainstream Hollywood ones, only recent ones, and considerably less than half had an action sequence within 5 minutes of the 60-minute mark. When you consider that it's another one of these supposed rules that Joel Silver was really into, the guy who produced The Matrix and Lethal Weapon, was that there should be an action sequence every 10 minutes. That should be impossible.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
So anyway, in this podcast, he really hammers on this, that there are points like this all throughout every mainstream movie. And what he said was, skip to 60 minutes on any movie on Netflix, and you will get one of these scenes. So,
I feel like I could disprove that one.
yes, I felt the same way. So let's take a look and see. I went through a bunch of movies.
Holy crap.
So I actually started with this script called The Good Time Gang, which was a script that sold for a lot of money but never got made. You
Was it on the blacklist?
No, strangely enough. The same author did have a script on the blacklist, something called Chronicle.
Oh.
Anyway, so page 60, the main character has a conversation with his girlfriend. Specifically, by the way, in the podcast, David Wong said that if an executive flips to page 60 and sees a boring conversation, forget it. Script goes in the trash. So, 60 minutes into Black Panther, that's when they realize that Martin Freeman has been shot, and then they take him to Wakanda. That's almost a big thing.
It could have been and then was fixed.
I mean, everything on either side of it was much more dramatic, but, you know, whatever. Last Jedi, there's a conversation between Rey and Kylo Ren.
Which is significant in its own way, but...
It's not an action scene.
Not an action scene.
Or, you know, or a big turning point. I went with Death Race Anarchy because I figure, okay, maybe the little guys go by these rules. It's a conversation and then two people kiss. Thor Ragnarok, a conversation between the villains of absolutely no importance to the plot.
You skipped Hurricane Heist there.
Oh yeah, Hurricane Heist? Oh yeah, the bad guys agree to work together with each other.
Okay.
Yeah, Don't Kill It, you know, with Dolph Lundgren.
We love that one.
Dolph Lundgren has a conversation with a priest.
Okay.
Let's see, Destination Wedding, starring Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder.
God,
I'm looking for anything. Romantic
Holy
comedy.
shit.
It's just a conversation. They're sitting there having a conversation. RoboCop 2. That's Tom Noonan tests his new designer drug. Nuke. A new version of Nuke, anyway. Let's see, Baby Mama. I think starring Amy Poehler and Tina Fey, maybe?
Oh, that one.
Two people have a conversation on the front step of a building. Let's see, Moxie, the script we just read for the podcast. Conversation on the toilet. So yeah, I tried to prove this, and I was like, I'm sorry, but I can't fix anything in this article. And they were just like, we'll find somebody else. As near as I can tell, the article was never, ever, ever published. Oh boy. So
I'm starting to see why.
So a couple of things wrong with his theory here.
Everything?
One being that an executive...
Did do any work on it?
One being that a studio executive is probably never going to flip to page 60 in a screenplay because they have interns to do that for them. A lot of executives probably never read a screenplay ever, and if they do, it's because somebody already told them, we can sell this.
Some of them get other people to read it for them.
Even then, yes. There's a well-known producer. He worked on, like, the Tim Burton Batman. I've forgotten his name. But he's a fucking lunatic, so... John Peters. I'm not going to get into it. He's amazing. He's like my spirit animal, and I hate that. Oh my god. Okay, what else did I write down that I want to say about this? Oh yeah, so basically what David Wong is talking about here is 3-act structure. He's sort of misinterpreting it entirely, but 3-act structure. See...
Beginning, middle, end?
Exactly. Which is the way stories are shaped, is beginning, middle, end, and that makes 3-act structure.
Unless you're Pulp Fiction.
Or, actually, you might say that Pulp Fiction has, like, 3-act structure over and over again.
Yes.
Okay.
And a lot of weird movies that you think don't have 3-act structure sort of do. Except for Malcolm X, that definitely doesn't. Some people have said that has, like, a 9-act structure, and that kind of makes sense. But then maybe you could say it's 3-act structure 3 times. I'm not really sure on that one. But basically, three-act structure isn't supposed to be a way to write a story. It's supposed to be a way to analyze a story afterwards. Some people do use three-act structure as a way to write their stories, and those people are bad writers. But some of them do get scripts published. I can guarantee you there are some producers who are like, it has to follow the structure perfectly. But I can guarantee you it's not a lot of them, because there are a lot of successful screenwriters who say, ignore three-act structure, that's stupid, shut up. But what David Wong's following in this is a book called, and I can tell it's this book because he uses the book's terms that other people don't use. It's a book called Shave the Cat, which was written by the guy who wrote Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, starring Estelle Getty and Sylvester Stallone.
That explains why the title's so stupid.
Yes. So he wrote this book called Shave the Cat. The concept behind the title is that when you introduce the main character in your story, he should be introduced in the act of shaving a cat, so that you can build sympathy with him. He gets the idea from Alien, which is weird, because in Alien, that's not the introductory scene of the film. She doesn't shave the cat until much later.
Okay.
Wait, save the cat. Yeah, basically the hero has to do something, like, nice to let you know he's a good person.
That makes more sense.
But Ripley doesn't save the cat until, like, more than halfway through the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So the example he named his book after doesn't fit what he's talking about. But he wrote Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, so obviously he knows more about screenwriting than everybody who says, do not read Shave the Cat, it is a terrible book, and teaches you nothing. So, oh god, yeah, he talks about the catalyst, which again, that's how you can tell it's Shave the Cat instead of like any of the other three-act structure things. Most people call that inciting incident.
Yes, there it is.
Yeah.
I was trying to think, because like this is the three-act structure used to analyze after you've watched it, or, well, in my case, I'm like, that sounds so familiar. Why do I know that? I was taught it in English to go back and read, or to analyze books that way. I'm like, oh, well, maybe it applies to movies. And I thought about it for 5 seconds, like, no, it does not. It doesn't apply to half the books either.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what these structures are. They're not definitive. It's just a way to try to understand story. Like the version I was taught in school had the climax dead center in the middle of the story. According to that structure, the middle of Romeo and Juliet is, you know, when Mercutio dies. That's the climax. And everything from there is just, you know, the denouement. The
denouement and then the ending, right?
Yeah, exactly. Whereas with a three-act structure, as like Shave the Cat guy sees it, the climax would be when he kills Paris outside the tomb, probably.
That's not even the way I was taught, where the climax is the end, like basically when Romeo...
The suicide.
The suicides.
Yeah.
And then you have the little denouement afterwards, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Usually denouement's 10 pages max in a book, and about 5 to 15 minutes in a movie.
Yeah.
Depending on how much loose ends you need.
Sometimes people leave that part off altogether.
Yeah.
Especially in movies.
Yes. Especially in lower budget, shorter movies.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know... And this guy, Film Crit Hulk, if you've ever heard of him. He's a guy who writes about film criticism in the voice of the Incredible Hulk. Which eventually just turned into just writing everything in all caps. That's pretty much all it is now. But he thinks that it should be a 5-act structure to understand modern film.
Well,
but he thinks a lot of things.
Rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. That's how we were taught in school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I was talking about with climax right in the goddamn middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's I always...
Well, actually, the way they drew it, it was like kind of like rhombish, you know, like a weird shape where like it was like skewed this way.
Yeah.
We had an arc with the climax right in the goddamn center.
Yeah, so I know that too, but the climax is very much at the end. It's like, you take about 90% of the movie to get to climax, and then there are these two things that happen at the end, but they real quick.
Yeah. Well, what we were taught as the climax is basically what in a 3-act structure is called the point of no return.
Yeah. But
like,
that doesn't feel right. That feels better as inciting incident.
Yeah, you can see how all of these are just like...
It's throwing things at the wall, see what sticks.
Some things make sense in some make sense in others. It's
nothing's going to fit everything.
They're academic tools, you know. And so trying to say, yes, specifically on page 15 you get the catalyst is... Yeah, no. By the way, the catalyst in... what was that one I started with? Good Time Gang. Page 25. They spent a lot of time setting up the characters in that script.
Sometimes you need to.
Exactly. I mean, Lord knows, like the structure of Avengers is, you know,
oh my god,
very different.
Well, that's also multiple movies.
Yeah.
The first one, though?
I'm talking about, like...
Well, just Avengers 1.
Oh, you just mean that movie specific. Yeah. I thought you meant like the Avengers universe. I'm like, well, you see, we get a whole bunch of fucking... Oh, God. Like, that's like a 35-act structure we got going on.
Oh, God. Trying to chart a franchise would drive you insane.
Yes. It would.
Like, because they're all fucking connected.
That's also one of my thoughts, too, of, like, Hollywood movies are getting way longer these days.
Which one of those fucking movies right now is the climax, technically?
Yeah. And a lot of people, talking about Hollywood movies changing, a lot of people are saying that the second act is sort of going away. Which is possibly true and possibly just people talking out their own ass.
Yeah.
Because they're mostly saying this about films I haven't seen, like Venom and the last Transformers movie. Could be true. I haven't seen them.
I want to see Venom.
Venom's good. I've seen it twice now.
I want to see it when the unrated cut comes out. If the unrated cut.
Oh no!
That could have come out very wrong. Only came out slightly wrong. If the unrated cut comes out. I don't know why I can't talk today, but I can't. Okay, did I make any more notes to mention in this? Shave the cat, yeah. Always important to shave a cat in a movie. Oh, yeah. So he hit some off-topic stuff that you guys probably didn't listen to at all. Because why would you listen to that whole fucking thing where he keeps repeating himself?
I'm assuming you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, because it's the one that I'm putting forward, so if I don't listen to it, what the fuck am I doing?
Fair.
Like, let me just say, I don't have anything against David Wong / Jason Pargin. He's actually one of my favorite authors. He wrote John Dies at the End, which I mention a lot. You know, this book is full of spiders.
Some really good writing in this book.
Yeah, yeah. And, by the way, they also follow a 3-act structure. In fact, John Dies at the End follows it twice.
Nice.
And then they adapted it for a movie, and he shortened it. Well, the guy who adapted it did, Don Coscarelli. And now it sort of follows a 3-act structure, but sort of doesn't, because what's set up at the beginning isn't what's paid off at the end. He's paying off shit from a middle that's not in there. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a very good movie.
But, David Wong brings up the whole blue and orange thing as another thing that is one of those steadfast rules in Hollywood now, except that turned out to be a trend and it's not really a thing as much anymore.
What? All the, like, preview images for things were all blue and orange tinted?
And sometimes entire movies. Like Hot Tub Time Machine was one of the weirdest. Because it's this very blandly shot comedy, but there's Chevy Chase walking around bright orange with a bright blue background behind him. It's fucking weird.
I love that movie.
But you gotta admit, it looks a little weird.
A little bit. It did feel out of place.
Yeah. But that was a trend because color correction was just becoming way easier around then. And you have the sky, which is blue, and you have people, which turn orange if you fuck with the
colors.
I can't remember the setting right now, but
contrast.
I'll yell it in a second. Anyway, so yeah, the
saturation.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
When you mess with the saturation. So yeah, that was just a trend, you know, and it's not like it was whatever. It's not important. He also talks about Purple Rain for some reason.
Never seen that.
It's actually a very interesting movie. But he talks about Prince changing the story of his life in Purple Rain, whereas in the story there's this big conflict with his father, who's an abusive madman, and in real life his father actually co-wrote a bunch of his songs. Dude, Jason, finish watching Purple Rain. That's in the movie. Like the whole plot of Purple Rain is Prince, a musical genius, learning to accept that literally everyone else in the film is also a musical genius.
No.
It's a weird movie.
It's an interesting way to live.
Yeah, like everybody else. The whole movie, like the villain is Morris Day in The Time. It's great.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else? No, I think that's basically all the. Oh, he eventually at 40 minutes in, you didn't get this far. He sort of comes near a point, which is the idea that this is sort of how stories are, but he interprets it as if it's a magic trick that somebody discovered a long time ago to make people pay attention to stories. It's like, no, that's just what a story is, dude. It's just what a story is. Beginning, middle, end.
Yeah, people are attracted to stories for the entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
I will check out of stories very quickly. I don't have the attention span for some things that I'm sure probably fit this 3-act structure, and I get bored at odd, I don't know, perhaps more... I don't know how to finish that sentence. I didn't finish it in my head. I got bored with my own statement. Okay.
He couldn't even finish his own structure.
But the proof behind that of people getting bored even by a perfectly structured 3-act movie is Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, which I do not remember being a huge hit. Not the biggest.
Yeah.
Probably not the biggest. Any final thoughts on this one?
Let's see.
That's what I say.
I understand he had a point and he was probably passionate about it, but goddamn if that wasn't really boring. It was so boring.
Oh, yeah. The Cracked podcasts are hard to get through. I listen to a lot because, like I said, you know, David Wong is one of my favorite writers.
Mm-hmm.
And you used to work for them.
Yeah, that was actually sort of because David Wong was one of my favorite writers, but we'll get into that later. So, yeah. But even... He had a point, but he was wrong about that point.
Mm-hmm. It happens
people
sometimes.
are entitled to being wrong.
Sure.
That is true. Yeah, we all are. Like I said, I got
Especially
nothing
me.
against him. Okay.
I'm very wrong.
We know.
I'll take your word for it, man.
I mean, white chicks.
That is true. That is true.
Hey, people could be wrong for disliking white chicks. It all depends. If you're Tom...
On what planet you're on.
Yeah. Planet Tom or not.